Hey guys, thank you for stopping by for another video here at All I See Is W, where the goal of this channel is to gain on positive proceeds and lead with an altruistic mindset. In today's video, I wanted to cover overall Bitcoin updates today, especially with news from yesterday with Trump signing the crypto executive order. We'll go through the recent updates along with my price predictions with Bitcoin. We'll cover MicroStrategy as well with what happened today in the market. We'll cover updates with MSTR news, as well as talk about the price predictions for the big three miners. I'll cover my technical analysis, what my price predictions are in the coming weeks, and we'll cover just fundamental updates with MSTR, the big three miners, as well as the Bitcoin commodity. Now, if you're new to this channel, I would really appreciate you hitting the like and subscribing for more related content. So yesterday we got really great news. In fact, our leader, Donald Trump, he's been so resilient. I mean, just after a couple of days in the White House, he's signed hundreds of executive orders, and it's interesting to see how Donald Trump signed the crypto executive order in that the key takeaway is, banning the central bank digital currency. And that really was very uplifting, at least for all of the Bitcoin investors. And also, one of the interesting things was removing one of the uh, amendments from the accounting that had to do with custody. Now, what's interesting with that is now banks have more of that ability. They're more interested with having Bitcoin custody. When you think about it, most clients, whether they want to self-custody, there's also a pool of people where they would prefer very much to pay their banks to have custody of their Bitcoin so that the financial institutions can take on that risk. So, of course, the banks will take on that, especially if they're going to get paid for that. So, this really changes the dynamics for how banks work, especially being able to custody Bitcoin. So, what does that all mean? That really means, there's going to be a lot of financial institutions adopting the similar strategy that we've seen with BlackRock, Fidelity. A lot of companies are really going to start hodling up Bitcoin, especially with all of this news. I think it's just a level of adapting, getting involved and really, building up that HODL with Bitcoin in the year 2025. So we're going to hear a lot more about that. And with the amendment of the SAB, now even companies are not even required to claim Bitcoin custody as a liability on their balance sheet. So that takes away that extra level of difficulty away. So this really is a win-win situation here. Also, just with all of what's going on here, the government, having the ability to, stockpile lawfully seized cryptocurrency. So this really just shows the sentiment with the US government to continue to hodl up as much Bitcoin as possible and not sell any Bitcoin, which we're seeing, in other countries like China. However, I think what's interesting is that even though China recently had a sell-off of 20 billion of Bitcoin, BlackRock continues to buy up Bitcoin, increasing their HODL count. We've seen ETFs like IBIT take off just with the creation of that ETF in 2024. And that's really, increasing the expansion of the price of Bitcoin. What's interesting is that Bitcoin, you know, just with the recent all-time high, it's actually this week alone where Bitcoin was able to maintain over the $100,000. So I think this is a big sentiment here. We're seeing healthy consolidation, price hovering above 100K. So that really just shows that we're just going to see that next gap up very soon here. Let's take a look at this rainbow chart here. So we did, have the recent halving back in 2024, and it's only been, less than a year where we've gone past that halving, but especially with halving event taking place, that raises difficulty in mining. The cost increases for the Bitcoin miner. So all of that really resulted in the share price to drop, and that's what the shorters have really taken an advantage of. especially for the mining community. But what's going to be driving catalysts, which we'll be covering as we look at the price targets of the Bitcoin miners, is that come February, where there's going to be earnings reports announced for like MSTR, Bitcoin miners like Mara, CleanSpark, and Riot, it's really going to demonstrate that these companies are really operating, making money as a business, maturing to show that, mining Bitcoin, hodling Bitcoin is a business model, and that these companies are really capitalizing on the price appreciation with the price of Bitcoin. And what's interesting here is just looking at the rainbow chart here, we're still in that accumulation phase in that green zone. We barely just broke through that low point of the blue tier. We're in that green tier, but we haven't even got to the yellow, orange, and red tier yet, which is what we typically see in every bull cycle. So, what is showing here is that we're still early in the game, and I think that 2025 we're going to see Bitcoin price break through that 200K. Even BlackRock CEO, he's forecasting 700K. HC Wainwright has price predictions of 225 to 250K in the year 2025 alone. Let's take a look at just recent updates with MSTR here. So, most of you are wondering, why is it that MSTR price went down today? It dropped by 5%. And I think what really happened was that the shorters took advantage of like the recent news updates about MSTR having to pay unrealized uh, profits on tax, unrealized gains. So that's about 15% of unrealized profit up to about 19 billion. I think all of this is just FUD information. We don't even know if this is really going to be mandatory here, but just with MSTR's business model, they have many levers going on where they're able to capitalize. Think of the analogy of like MSTR being like a vacuum, or even the black hole in outer space just sucking up all that fiat money from investors and just being able to use that money to buy more Bitcoin. They have many levers, whether that's increasing the ATM, selling convertible notes, through convertible bonds. They are able to use all of these different techniques and strategies to gain money without actually having to use, their own money on their balance sheet to be able to buy more Bitcoin until Bitcoin becomes depleted at one point. But this business model is working. It's demonstrated to work. I mean, a lot of people didn't believe in the MicroStrategy business model early on, but they've pivoted. They have become resilient. And just with the last 11 weeks, they've been able to just buy up more Bitcoin here. But this is really what drew the price down. Shorters took advantage of this, short hiccup here, in that, there may be potential having to pay $19 billion of unrealized gains, with the IRS. But I think all of this here is that it's all to be determined. It may not even be the case where they actually have to pay the IRS. So I think that, it's just a matter of time to see whether this is really true or not. It's all a potential and not necessarily the case where they do have to pay unrealized profits. Let's also take a look at recent news here in that MSTR. They announced news about redeeming $1.05 billion of its 2027 convertible senior notes by February 24, 2025. What does this all mean, right? What's the goal here? So basically, they're trying to repay its 2027 convertible notes, worth, over $1 billion. So what they're trying to do is really bring down their debt on their balance sheet so that why they can add shareholder value. Having shareholder value, that means having more Bitcoin HODL for each shareholder investor to buy up more Bitcoin. That's really what they're trying to do. They're just following their business model, do whatever it takes, bring down the debt on their balance sheet so that they can buy up more Bitcoin. Think of the black hole strategy where they're just going to vacuum, suck up all of the fiat that's available, use that money to buy up Bitcoin, because in the long-term approach, price of Bitcoin will continue to go up. So that's the overall business model. Um, Before we go through the technicals of MSTR, just wanted to cover another update here in that we have, the Stargate project here. So, very increased demands with AI and crypto. We've heard from Trump, with his announcement that we're going to have US be the powerhouse of crypto and AI, really to be like the number one country when it comes to innovation, transforming the way we look at healthcare, engineering, and technology. So I think this is really going to put more sentiment on companies that are focused on AI and crypto currency. Let's take a look at MSTR price action here today, even though in the, heading towards the end of the market, it dropped by 5%, and it was all attributed to, potential dilution, increasing the shares, just with the convertible note through increase of their shares. The shorters took advantage of that in that dilution may be an issue. But when you think about it, for a company that's as big as MSTR, when you increase your number of shares at the ATM, as long as the market capitalization continues to grow, as long as MSTR continues to buy Bitcoin, that is really going to be a win-win situation for shareholders. Along with the recent news about the potential tax troubles of having to pay $19 billion dollars, that's what's resulted in the price, that sudden hiccup that we saw today. But just from a technical standpoint here, I think what we're seeing here is with that recent high back in November of 550. We saw that falling wedge back in December 31st, but I think that what we're seeing is that healthy tightening up consolidation, even though just in the recent weeks of trading, since January 17th, we saw a slight pullback here, but I think that as we head into the following week, next week, we're going to see that V shape up. I think there's been enough short selling with MSTR. We're going to see some positive price actions as we head into the new week next week, especially with all of the catalyst that has been coming with the change in the accounting strategy, with all of the ownership custody flexibility for banks now, as well as, just with having the task force that's been created with the change in the SEC. All of this is a win-win situation for MSTR as we look at it from a long-term perspective here. But I do think that in Q1, sometime in February, we're going to see, that retest back into that 550. But I think in 2025, we can very well see MicroStrategy get up to that $1,200 range, is my analysis. Let's take a look at this visual here. Mara, another big time company here. Their HODL count is about 45,000 Bitcoins. They mine and they actually bought more Bitcoin with their convertible note with 0% interest. So what's interesting is that Mara, I mean, I like the technicals analysis. I mean, back in November, price around $28, dropped 50% in a matter of like weeks. Current price support at 17, where we are now at like, close to that sub $20. We're going to start seeing that V shape up. It's only a matter of time where we're going to see that retest of $30. There's no question that it won't break through that $30. I think that we're going to see that most likely in February. But I do think that we're going to see, some price action heading into that, that 50 to $100 range with Mara. Bullish signals, RSI has been significantly low here, sub 50. But I do think that because we were at that low point of like 30, we're going to see, that, overbought signal kick in, and then we're going to see some heavy buying volume increase with Mara very soon here. Let's take a look at another visual here in that, CleanSpark, similar to what we saw with Mara, back in November 25th, hovering at around like close to $18, and then it just dropped by 50%, all the way up through like January 6th. But we're beginning to see a reverse pattern with the technicals, volumes beginning to pick up. I hope that people took advantage buying low at that, that sub $10 range. We're beginning to see upside here, it breaking $12. And I think that as we head into 2025, I do see CleanSpark, potentially getting back to its retest of $24 March of 2024. But I wouldn't be surprised. CleanSpark could very well 3 to 5x, into that $50 range is my perspective. Let's take a look at another company here, Riot Platforms. Riot, what we're looking at here today, it actually went up by 4.3%. So good news is that the price is above the Ichimoku cloud, the technical indicators here. You ideally want to be above that cloud. That's really going to be that gravitational pull down if the price is below that cloud there. So think of that as like, anti gravity here, especially when you're above that cloud. But I do think that what we're seeing, some really good positive upside here. We're breaking out of that descending resistance here. We're beginning to see some nice healthy upward movement, higher highs being established since September. So I think because Riot bled out so much last year, even though price of Bitcoin went up, I think there's potential for Riot to really serve investors very well in the year 2025 with the potential 3 to 5x. We saw what Riot had done, back in 2021, going from like $3 to $80. So I do think that there's that short squeeze 2.0 potential, especially being dormant for so long. But from a near term, we saw that it did reach $15 back in November. I think we're going to see that retest most likely next week or so, depending on the price of Bitcoin, the volatility, the speed of Bitcoin going up. Hopefully, we see some price action over on the weekend with Bitcoin, but I do think that $20, we're going to see that in Q1. And, in 2025, with all of these catalysts going with earnings report that's going to be coming out along with monthly production data, I could very well see these Bitcoin miners as well as Riot to reach $50 this year alone. So there you have it. I hope that you found this video valuable where I covered price of Bitcoin, what my prediction is. We talked about MicroStrategy, what my price prediction is in 2025. We also covered the big three Bitcoin miners, talking about Mara, CleanSpark, and Riot's price prediction in the year 2025. Now, if you're new to this channel, I would really appreciate the like and subscribe for more related content. Thanks, guys, and please make sure to leave your comments down below and where you're actually from. What country are you from? What state are you from? Thank you, guys.